Auguste and Louis Lumière were born in Besançon, France in 1862 and 64. The family moved to Lyon in 1870, where both attended the largest technical school in Lyon. Their father ran a photographic firm, and both brothers worked for him. It was not until their father retired in 1892 that the brothers began to create moving pictures. The cinematograph is a film camera, which also serves as a film projector and developer. This instrument was patented in 1895, and the first footage ever to be recorded using it was recorded on March 19, 1895. This first film shows workers leaving the Lumière factory. The brothers stated that the cinema is an invention without any future, and declined to sell their camera to other filmmakers such as Georges Méliès. This made many filmmakers upset. Consequently, their role in the history of film was exceedingly brief. Or so the legend goes. The brothers' second film short, shown in all its 55 seconds of glory, was titled The Train Arriving at the Station. It was screened to a live audience, and most likely all present that night had never before seen a moving picture. It was said some members of the audience shrieked in fear as the train approached. Some ran away toward the back of the tiny theater. But one thing became very clear that night. Moving pictures contained a power never before imagined. Here, the sensory overload in a single scene is dizzying, so we can only imagine the imprint on the individual viewer over 100 years ago. His father had been a lieutenant colonel in the Confederate Army during the Civil War. He was born on January 22, 1875, on the family farm called Lofty Green near Crestwood, Kentucky, one of 7 children. His mother's name was Mary, and after the death of his father at the age of 10, the family was forced to sell the farm and move to Louisville. His name was David Wark Griffith, better known as D.W. Griffith. He went on to become one of the most famous movie directors in modern history, nearly by accident, after a principal director in the tiny film company of his employ took ill during a movie short in 1907. He went on to write and direct what would become the first feature-length movie, Birth of a Nation. Most thought the idea of a film any longer than 15 minutes would lose an audience to boredom, but at over 3 hours in length, Griffith not only proved them all wrong, but his first feature was also one of the first recorded blockbusters of the time, grossing more than $65 million, which in today's inflation would be well into the billions. The following is quoted from Wikipedia. The Birth of a Nation was released on February 8, 1915. It was originally presented in 2 parts separated by an intermission. It was the first 12-reel film in the United States. The film chronicles the relationship of 2 families in the Civil War. The assassination of Abraham Lincoln by John Wilkes Booth is dramatized. The film was a commercial success, though it was highly controversial for its portrayal of black men, many played by white actors in blackface, as unintelligent and sexually aggressive toward white women. Also, the portrayal of the Ku Klux Klan as a heroic force. There were widespread black protests against the film, such as in Boston, while thousands of Bostonians flocked to see the film. The film's release is also credited as being one of the events that inspired the reformation of the Ku Klux Klan in 1915. It was the first American motion picture to be screened inside the White House, viewed there by President Woodrow Wilson. In 1992, the Library of Congress deemed the film culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant, selecting it for preservation in the National Film Registry." End quote. But we also need to wonder what things may have been like, or could be, if these structures, disguised as art, had not helped to influence the outcome. Could wars have been avoided, disease averted, technology to serve as opposed to control? I don't know, because there's never been a precedent, no history of self-governance to draw on. This entire subject can easily get very deep and also argued to the point of a stalemate. But that's what usually occurs when egos are involved, because the ego is fortified through external processes, usually involving but not limited to education. And who can argue with a PhD, a doctorate, a master's, a bachelor's, or MBA, or any other degree of scrubbing concealed as schooling? Right away, this will get under our skin. It'll rub us the wrong way and cause a bristling of the mind, because this is the ego standing its installed ground. I'll avoid this minefield and all other forms of ego fortification if at all possible, because there's something much more deceptive and cunning that's been hiding within the deep grass of societal engineering. This form of grooming permeates the guard of ego as water through a sieve. It transcends and envelops our conscious and subconscious minds all at the same time. It's so pervasive and polished that we never see it coming. We actually enjoy it washing over us because it never violates any of our belief installations. It melds as water finding its own level within us all. What is it? It's media, all kinds, the greatest tool of public debilitation ever formulated. Almost, if not completely, a form of electronic cancer, a parasite in its own right. It has separated us from our minds, our sovereign tools of discernment between right and wrong, empathy, and the caring for all beings within this realm. Media of all types has exploded since the turn of the last century. The centuries-old story of good and evil, heroes and love has been incarnated over and again in all forms. Some big-budget movies have emotionally moved the public because they stir a common denominator. It's a predominant chord struck in a manner preconceived by the architects of the same. When millions of dollars are at stake, every word is scrutinized within a script for its contribution to the sum total. Every shot is built and agonized over for its continuity, color, content, symbolism, and its ability to vicariously draw the viewer into the story of us. We all know the power of words, the spell that can be cast with their combination in a sentence or longer. When combined within a representation or on-screen character, we are easily transported, substituting our own existence for the on-screen depiction, if even for a moment. Maybe we can even go so far as to call this an out-of-body experience, a roller coaster ride an audience observes in unison. Because after all, what of our own reality is to some greater or less extent scripted by ourselves, and how much of that reality is really based upon our collective perception of the same? Our lives parallel in so many ways. Being human within an inhuman reality is quite the trick, but we seem to mirror one another as much as we try to hide. And conversely, there are components within nearly, if not every major motion picture that are never left out. As a matter of fact, they are so pervasive we probably miss them most of the time. One of the most massive, longest-running inclusions are scenes having to do with the consumption of alcohol. When you factor in the reality that any 1 to 2 minute setting in a major motion picture can literally cost millions of dollars, then you'll understand there's a directive and purposeful reason for these expenditures. It's nothing more than an insurance policy that will undoubtedly pay dividends many times over, because our subconscious minds never miss a beat.
What'll it be?
I'm awfully glad you asked me that, Lloyd. because I just happen to have 2 20s and 2 10s right here in my wallet.
For those of us believing these particulates are merely art imitating life, then you'd be exactly right. Because as much as we hate to admit it, we are creatures of habit, good or bad. We will make excuses for all these components within a lifetime, even if they kill us. Dead people rarely make any trouble, and addicts are slaves to the addictions, and so the assurance of the insurance is safely and legally indemnified. There truly is a method behind what appears to be art, dressed as escapism, portrayed as amusement, because we let it in. We buy it. We contract with it. And we'll argue and defend all the aforementioned components simply because they're not only legal, but more importantly, they're a major part of our collective reality. There are so many social nuances portrayed within a single movie that we miss nearly all of them. Sometimes we feel uncomfortable because they wedge their way in as we vicariously enter into storylines, uninvited, voyeurs, together there in the dark of the theater. We collectively laugh, cry, rape, murder, love, scream, scare, and partake in beatings, racism, epithets, and designations. We are exposed to a grilling, a force majeure that may transcend all our personal boundaries, but we've left all our necessary social pinnings out in the parking lot with the car. Here, we are naked to the exposure, and it's okay. Like any amusement ride, we do realize what we might be in for, but it's an escape from the dire necessity of living our own lives. And if that statement sounds too negative, even wrong, then what is it that attracts us so to movies? Why is there the need to escape our own reality? Could it be we are guided by the same thing we are trying to escape, which in fact ensures that we'll stay anchored into this cycle of prison and temporary escape? The hamster and the goldfish can view their cages not as such because they're born into the sum total of their universe. At the same time, we need those cages for them, because without them, they take to exploring all that is outside the boundaries of their glass and wire worlds. We, on the other hand, because of our programmed egos, our minds, believe we are completely free because we are told as much. But truthfully, we are only as free as we can afford. A movie will never define things in this way. It will only encapsulate a small snapshot, an edited version of an entire lifetime or frame of days. Is this where being politically correct is enforced? In the movies, do we find it easier to be accepting of the order because it plays a part in that very same story, or because it leaves the lips of our favorite actors? And maybe I'm just reading into this too much, because I am guilty of enjoying movies at face value. I do take pleasure in the vicarious escape it affords me, but I've also sensed a divide by my own mind. I can no longer enjoy the magic show for what it is because it's become too transparent. In other words, I can sense this medium is becoming too gratuitous in its demands, and I believe we are in fact outgrowing the need for this escapism because we've had the power all along to be our own heroes, to save the world and feed the children, to right the wrongs and end the cancer.
Well, there's a thing that happens with sensation-seeking, habituation. Habituation is a basic law of learning in the lowest organisms. When you expose them to something repeatedly, over and over, they respond less to it. They're less aroused by it, even though initially it was arousing. When they get used to it, and nothing happens, nothing particularly happens, they get less aroused. Now, in violence or in sex, this occurs too. Habituation, you know. So what was initially very arousing, let's say in sex, you know, the honeymoon, with time becomes still pleasurable but less arousing. And that's why the high sensation seekers have to look for new sources of arousal. Now, this occurs in films too. You start out with simple horror films, you know, and the high sensation seeker says, "Ah, yeah, that's fine," but he gets bored by it, and so when they're allowed to by legally, and recently the society has loosened about its laws about depiction of violence and sex in the media, so they push it, they keep pushing it to the extreme, because they find that people, as high sensation seekers become habituated, they become bored with it and they need something more. They go to something that's more exciting.
These are our boys! Jules! And Vern!
Dr. Brown, I brought this note back from the future and now it's erased.
Of course it's a race!
But what does that mean?
It means your future hasn't been written yet. No one has. Your future is whatever you make it. So make it a good one. Both of you.
What am I bid, gentlemen?
Don't we get to look before we buy?
Kids, you can look all you want. Just don't break the merchandise.
Hey, how do we know she is a virgin?
Have I ever lied to you before? Satisfaction guaranteed. Well, gentlemen, I'm getting impatient.
The iconic child star, Shirley Temple, was born on April 23, 1928. For 4 years during the Great Depression, this talented little girl remained America's #1 box office attraction. Shirley began her long film career at age 3, when she starred in an all-child cast Baby Burlesque series, produced and directed by Jack Hayes and Charles Lamont. Lamont is widely credited with being Shirley's discoverer. During the 1930s, the baby burlesque short films screened regularly before the main feature. Commonly interpreted as innocent, fun-filled spoofs on leading actresses of the stage and cinema, the baby burlesque films are in fact replete with disturbing slapstick jokes and sly innuendos. As the leading lady, Shirley Temple frequently played a prostitute or nightclub performer. In Glad Rags to Riches, she was La Belle Diaperina, a dancer at the Lullaby Lobster Palace. Her beau, Elmer, fails to impress when he chomps down hard on an enormous pickle. In War Babies, Pipsqueak Shirley played the diaper-clad harlot Gloria. The toddler soldiers, hanging around Pete's Buttermilk Cafe, compete for her attention by presenting her with enormous lollipops. Titillating side entertainment is provided by the tap-dancing African-American boy who performs a slow striptease down to his underwear. Down on all fours, another toddler sits open-mouthed beneath an overturned baby bottle. A large sign in the background states, "Sour milk." When things go awry, Gloria comes to the rescue by pulling a rubber glove from her purse and attaching it to a keg of sweet milk. As the youngster suckles away, a man can be heard moaning rather than mooing on the accompanying soundtrack.
Hi.
Hi.
One vegetarian pizza. It's $12.15.
Oh. By the way, if it makes you feel any better, I happen to like 8-year-old boys.
What?
I mean, no. You said you thought that your hair looked like an 8-year-old boy's, and I'm just saying I like it. The hair.
Thanks. You know, all I'm looking for is the money.
Now stop bringing us pizzas, you.
I'm gonna try.
Last I heard, the cops had over 600 reports of missing women still living. 600.
It can easily be argued that movies are quite simply escapism, harmless depictions of other people's lives and experiences. But at the same time, why are we so drawn to what amounts to the same story of good and evil, love and life, told in thousands of different ways? Because I believe we are trying to escape a mere portrayal and explode the potential that we all possess outside that which we assume does not exist. The only thing keeping us from this is us, and the ones trying to keep us inside the theater know it. I also enjoy watching sports of all kinds, but I see it as the same sort of distraction, a design to siphon our collective desire, our motivation to strike out and explore our individual potential. We engage a kind of visceral attachment to these things. Our own lives take a back seat sometimes, and that would seem to be the ultimate tragedy. I've watched more movies than I care to admit. I grew up in a family that loved movies, and I still enjoy them very much. But more and more I see them as a vehicle of loop entrapment. I realize that sounds crazy and will make many think it's absolute lunacy, but that's my opinion. There is nothing wrong with most of these distractions, but what is most disturbing is the engineering of our own will, our potential. With clear discernment, it's not too difficult to see there have been precise trends during the decades in movies, cultural shifts, usually ignited by successful, sometimes shocking thresholds crossed, that only a few years prior would have caused explosive public pushback. But it's done incrementally so that audiences nearly expect what may and eventually does come to pass. We've all bared witness to the unfolding of nudity levels, blood and killing, human beings doing terrible things to one another in the name of war or human disagreements, almost in a glorification of the same, racial conflict, multiple degrees of child abuse, and outright pedophilia. The exposure to crimes of the church, politics, marital infidelity, and the normalizing of throwaway relationships. We've witnessed the remake of countless historical events enacted over and over again using many different scenarios and usually, if not always, avoiding the element of truth altogether. Many will push back against this notion, but others know this is only a cursory observation. There is so much more that prevails beneath the surface in all aspects of the entertainment or entrainment industry. On an individual level, we will all assess our own place within what we alone can only describe as our personal reality. We'll ask ourselves how we got here to this place in our minds, our lives. And in many cases, we may find that the means to this very end were in fact allowed to take root by no one other than us, the individual. And conversely, it can only ever be the individual who will effect authentic change by uncovering the truth, because it alone is the bedrock upon which all else has been built, which might take us back to the words of D.W. Griffith. Movies are written in sand, applauded today, forgotten tomorrow.
Wait.
What?
I don't know.
What
Just
do you
wait.
want, Joel?
Just wait. I don't know. I want you to wait for just a while.
Okay.
Really?
I'm not a concept, Joel. I'm just a fucked up girl who's looking for my own peace of mind. I'm not perfect.
I can't see anything that I don't like about you.
But you
right
will.
Now I can't.
But you will. You know, you will think of things. And I'll get bored with you and feel trapped because that's what happens with me.
Okay.
Okay.
Change your heart, look around you. Change your heart, it will astound you. I need your loving like the sunshine. Everybody's gotta learn sometime. Everybody's gotta learn sometime. Everybody's gotta learn sometime. Everybody's gotta learn sometime. Change your heart, look around you. Change your heart, it will astound you. I need your loving like the sunshine. Everybody's gotta learn sometime. Everybody's gotta learn sometime. Everybody's gotta learn sometime. Everybody's gotta learn sometime.